49ers have quietly dropped a big update that nobody seems to be talking about. And it's one of those things that could change the entire outlook of the team heading into the next season. The most important news, and the one that really caught me off guard, is the update on Nick Bosa and Mikael Williams. John Lynch mentioned that both players are expected to return around training camp, and that's massive. We are talking about two of the starting defensive ends, and if they truly come back on schedule, it completely changes the defensive outlook for the Niners. It also matters because the team has been looking to add more pass rush threat, and if Bosa and Williams are back, that need becomes a lot less urgent. Nick Bosa, in particular, is one of those players who elevates everyone around him. When you have a dominant pass rusher like him, it forces offenses to game plan differently, it opens up opportunities for the rest of the line, and it just makes the entire defense better. It is a rising tide situation, and Bosa is the tide. What makes this update even more significant is that we've seen how much the 49ers have struggled with injuries over the past couple of seasons. The injury situation has been grim, and fans have been tired of watching key players go down week after week. That's why hearing that both Bosa and Mikael Williams are on track to return around training camp feels like a huge step in the right direction. It also raises expectations. If these players are healthy, the Niners have a real shot at being one of the most dominant defenses in the league again. But at the same time, it's a reminder of how fragile everything can be in this sport. One setback in rehab or one misstep in training camp could change the entire trajectory of the season. On the injury front, another name that came up was Alfred Collins, who suffered a shoulder injury against Seattle. The fact that it could require surgery is concerning, and it's even more confusing because the game was 4 days ago and the team still isn't sure if he needs the procedure. That's a lot of uncertainty in a short span of time, and it raises questions about how the injury is being evaluated and managed. The uncertainty is also interesting because in the meantime, Collins appeared to be fine during the team dinner, which is obviously a joke, but still speaks to the weirdness of how quickly injuries can fluctuate. You could be walking around seemingly normal one moment and then be dealing with a major issue the next. That's the nature of football injuries, and it's something that has haunted the Niners for years. Meanwhile, Nick Martin was cleared from concussion protocol, which is a relief because that situation dragged on for a long time. Concussions are always tricky, and the fact that he was able to get cleared is a good sign. It also shows that the team is finally making progress in areas where they've struggled in the past. In the same press conference, John Lynch also confirmed that the 49ers have been looking into the electrical substation issue, reaching out to anyone and everyone to see if any studies exist. I'm not going to dive into the conspiracy side of things or the legitimacy of the claims, but the fact that the Niners are investigating it is a positive sign. It shows that they're taking the issue seriously and are willing to look at every possible factor that could impact player health. That kind of thoroughness is exactly what fans have been demanding. John Lynch opened the press conference with a strong commitment to players' safety and health, and he made it clear that the team is turning over every stone to figure out the injury situation. That's something a lot of fans are going to hold him accountable for, because the 49ers have had far too many seasons with major injury problems. It's one thing to have injuries due to in-game contact, but it's another thing to see the same types of soft tissue injuries and recurring problems that seem to pop up year after year. Lynch acknowledged that, and it's a big deal. He also addressed the fact that some injuries, like Bosa's and Warner's, are hard to blame on training or conditioning because they happen during games. Still, there are other cases where the team can be held accountable, and fans are right to demand answers. When you look at the broader injury landscape, there are a few players whose situations feel like they could have been handled differently. Ricky Pearsall is one of them. His return felt like it was pushed too soon, and the way the timeline kept stretching week after week raised questions about how the recovery was managed. The PCL injury is a major impact injury, but the lingering struggles throughout the season suggest that something was off. Fans have labeled him injury-prone, and while that might be a harsh label, it's hard to ignore the pattern. The bigger issue is not just whether he got hurt, but whether the team's training staff and decision-making process were properly set up to prevent a premature return. When you're dealing with high-level athletes, the metrics and benchmarks matter, and there needs to be a buffer built in to protect the player from rushing back too early. Then there's the problem of soft tissue injuries that have plagued the roster, with players like Tatum Bethune constantly bouncing in and out of the lineup. Those types of injuries are frustrating because they often indicate that something deeper is wrong, whether it's workload management, recovery protocols, or just the physical toll of the season. Fans have a right to demand that the organization address these recurring issues, because it's hard to build sustained success when you're constantly losing players to nagging injuries. That's why Lynch's commitment to investigating every angle is so important. If he's serious about it, it should include not only looking at external factors, but also evaluating personnel and staff structures within the organization. After back-to-back seasons of serious injury problems, the 49ers need to take a more aggressive approach this time. Fans are tired of watching the same cycle repeat, and it's not unreasonable to expect the organization to step up. From the outside, it does feel like Lynch is acknowledging that and is prepared to act. The key question is whether the organization will follow through. It's one thing to say you're going to investigate, and another thing entirely to make real changes. But if Lynch is sincere, then the 49ers might finally be ready to address the long-standing issues that have held them back. And that could make a huge difference heading into the next season. For fans who create content, this is a familiar feeling. Every week, it seems like the conversation is dominated by injury updates. From Monday interviews to Wednesday practice reports, it becomes this constant cycle of trying to figure out who is going to practice and who might be out. It's exhausting, and it shouldn't be that way. The team should be about more than just injuries. It should be about the game, the strategy, the new additions, and the potential of the roster. The fact that injuries have become the central theme for so many weeks is a sign of how much this has affected the franchise. But it's also why the recent updates feel so significant. If the team can finally get through a season with fewer major injuries, the entire narrative changes. Now, when it comes to free agency, the 49ers are also facing some key decisions. One of the most important names is Jawan Jennings. John Lynch said he would love to have him back, but that it depends on how things go. That felt like the most uncertain of the players discussed. It almost sounded like a subtle admission that Jennings might be gone. But I still want to hold out hope because Jennings is exactly the type of player the 49ers need. He understands the system, he's reliable with the ball, and he's one of the best blocking wide receivers in the league. He brings toughness and culture to the offense, and those are the types of players you don't want to lose. The 49ers have already let go of other culture players in recent years, and it's hard to see Jennings leaving if the team can avoid it. He may not be a star, but he is a glue guy, and those players are invaluable. Kyle Shanahan also mentioned that they would like to re-sign Eddie Pearson, which makes sense after the season he had. Keeping the kicking unit together is also a priority, and the team expressed interest in retaining Thomas Morstead and John Weeks if possible. Stability in the special teams unit is often overlooked, but it can make a difference in close games. So, while the free agency picture is still developing, it's clear that the 49ers are trying to keep as much continuity as possible while also making sure they address the key needs on the roster. The other big topic is the defensive coordinator situation. With Robert Saleh potentially leaving for Tennessee, the 49ers are facing a coaching domino effect. Shanahan mentioned that Saleh may request interviews with current staff members to join him, which is completely normal in the NFL, but it's still something that needs to be addressed. The 49ers have quality coaches on their staff, and the organization needs to find ways to keep them from being poached. KJ Wright is one of those names that stands out. He has a strong reputation, and he's clearly respected across the league. Losing him would be a blow, so the 49ers should consider promoting him or making sure they lock him in before other teams come calling. The coaching staff is a big part of the team's identity, and keeping that stability is crucial. When Shanahan talked about the defensive coordinator search, he mentioned that Gus Bradley is the obvious internal candidate. That makes sense, and it's clear that the organization will also explore external options to meet league requirements and ensure they find the best fit. There's been a lot of talk about names like Jim Schwartz, Raheem Morris, and others. Richard Sherman even weighed in, saying that if Jim Schwartz doesn't get the job with the Browns, Shanahan will likely go all out to try to bring him to San Francisco. That would be a huge move, and it shows how important this decision is for the future of the defense. Finally, the situation with Brandon Aiyuk continues to be a major storyline. John Lynch was asked about it, and his response was telling. He admitted that he wished he knew what happened, and he said it's safe to say Aiyuk played his last snap with the 49ers. That confirmation was expected, but hearing it directly from Lynch makes it feel more real. The whole situation has been chaotic, and Lynch even took a bit of personal responsibility when he said he would look at what he could have done differently. That's notable because it shows he's willing to reflect on the organization's handling of the situation. Aiyuk is an incredible talent, but it's clear something wasn't right. Whether it was personal, mental, or something else, we don't know. But the way the situation unfolded suggests that the organization may have missed warning signs. There were red flags in the past with Aiyuk's behavior and social media activity, and the organization chose to continue investing in him. They gave him a big contract and believed they could make it work. But the outcome was disappointing, and it's a reminder that sometimes even the best organizations can misread a situation. Still, the fact that the team is now focusing on player health and injury management is a positive sign. If they can learn from this and make the necessary changes, it could be a turning point for the franchise. The most important takeaway is that if Bosa and Mikael Williams are truly healthy for training camp, it gives the 49ers a real chance to return to being one of the most dominant teams in the league, and that alone is worth getting excited about. Now, the bigger question for the 49ers is what comes next. If the team is truly going to take this injury situation seriously, then it has to go beyond words. Fans are tired of hearing the same assurances and seeing the same results. The 49ers have to show that they are willing to make real changes in how they approach player health, recovery, and overall training protocols. This might mean adding new voices to the staff, bringing in fresh perspectives, or even changing the way they evaluate players during the offseason. The reality is that the NFL has become a league where small details can make the difference between a championship run and a season full of frustration. So if the 49ers want to get back to the Super Bowl and stay there, they have to be willing to evolve. One of the things that stands out about the current situation is that the 49ers are not the only team dealing with injuries, but they're one of the most public examples of how a roster can be derailed by health issues. When you have players like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner on the field, you have a legitimate chance to be elite. But when those players miss time, it creates a ripple effect across the roster. Suddenly the depth gets tested, the defensive schemes have to be adjusted, and the team has to rely on players who might not be ready for that kind of responsibility. It is not just about losing talent, it is about losing continuity. And continuity is something that the 49ers have struggled to maintain in recent years. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to 49ers Zone and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the San Francisco 49ers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers are growing louder around San Francisco, and they all circle the same uneasy question. Is Brock Purdy's grip on the 49ers offense beginning to loosen? After a troubling performance in which the quarterback threw 3 interceptions, the aftermath may have been just as alarming as the plays themselves. Cameras lingered on the sideline and caught moments that instantly fueled speculation. Purdy sitting on the bench, helmet off, seemingly isolated while teammates clustered elsewhere, conversations happening without him. Inside league circles, body language often speaks louder than press conferences, and this time it has been dissected frame by frame. Some around the team insist it was nothing more than frustration boiling over, the natural reaction of competitors processing a rough night. Others, however, see something more concerning. A quarterback who, for the first time, looked alone in the middle of a storm. The 49ers have built their recent identity on efficiency, trust, and a system that demands total buy-in. Purdy once embodied that ideal, a calm distributor who rarely put the ball in harm's way. 3 interceptions in a single outing sharply contradict that image and reopen conversations that many thought were settled. Was his meteoric rise masking limitations? Have defensive coordinators finally cracked the code? Or Is the pressure of expectations starting to weigh heavier than before? Sources close to the locker room describe a tense atmosphere, not explosive but cold. Veterans are said to be demanding sharper execution, while coaches emphasize accountability without naming names. In that environment, even small gestures, a missed glance, a delayed word of encouragement, can morph into symbols of a deeper rift. No decisions have been announced, and publicly the team continues to project unity. Still, the NFL is a league of short memories and relentless evaluation. Quarterbacks are judged weekly, sometimes snap by snap. For Purdy, the narrative has shifted from feel-good story to uncertain future almost overnight. Whether this moment becomes a turning point or just a footnote would depend on what follows. For now, doubt has entered the conversation in Santa Clara, and once it does, it rarely leaves quietly. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the San Francisco 49ers, make sure to subscribe to 49ers Zone and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.